There has been no time in human history where we have been able to distribute the good news of Jesus to the ends of the earth. We didn't choose to be born when we did. No bitterness growing beneath the surface. So like if there's an issue, we're gonna just hash it out. Say the quiet part out loud. It's gonna hurt.
They would use me as a joke, you know, in front of their friends, or I would find out people would talk about me badly.
We worked it to say we help churches navigate the biggest communication shift in 500 years.
I promise you, that's all I'm giving you. Oh, Lord. That's it.
Blatant false advertising on the Sunshine Coast moniker.
Yeah, how rude.
I started on Vegas in high school. I
Yeah.
remember
Everyone's on Vegas.
Everyone, man.
I mean,
Not for long.
a cracked version
Yeah.
of Vegas,
Oh, yeah,
to be
but
clear.
of course.
You didn't pay for it. Yeah. And within the first week of launching it, we had 1,055 churches sign up and pay us $49 a month for this website builder.
Wow.
What makes you think you can do this? I don't know, man, but I just think I can. It's like, so you're deluded. Yes, but it's calculated delusion.
Yeah. People would pay out on me like, oh, I can't believe he thinks he can do this. It used to really affect me, man. Like, it used to really affect me when people would say things about me that weren't true.
This is the first place I've ever felt like just accepted for who I am. This youth pastor has been so influential for me. Like, I'd love to do that for the next generation. And the printing press, of course, kicked off the Protestant Reformation and was instrumental in the faith that we have today.
And take your time to think about this one. But what breaks your heart?
Thanks, Brady.
Yeah, thanks so much, man.
Actually, thank
I
you.
was actually saying to the guys on the way here, I was like, man, social media is exactly for this. Like, he sent me a post that you were here, and I was like, oh, what the heck? I'm just gonna hit him up. And then I just message you, you're here, it's a rainy day, let's get it done.
Nothing to do, but it's perfect.
That's awesome, man. Well, anyway, welcome back to the Kingdom Creatives podcast. My name's Sam, this is Josh, and we have a very special guest, Mr. Brady Shearer.
You got it.
How would you say it?
Shearer, yeah.
Oh yeah, cool. Okay, awesome.
Nailed it.
Man, we appreciate you. We're up here in Noosa. Man,
Not sunny Noosa.
no, not sunny Noosa, but it's great to have you on, man. Thanks for joining us.
This is so cool. Happy to be here.
Yeah, thanks, man. So I thought before we kick off, we do have some Vegemite. It's your first time in Australia, right?
That's correct.
So you and your buddy Tristan's here, your creative director. You're going to be in on this too. Can you grab another spoon, Tristan? I want you to try some of this as well.
So you guys never had Vegemite?
Never.
That's correct.
Oh, really?
We have not had it.
Never?
Never.
Have you heard the stories?
Certainly. My understanding is it's not supposed to be eaten alone on a spoon. This feels like a setup.
No, it's not a setup. Thanks, man. So what I'm going to do is you're just going to take just a little bit.
A little bit.
Just like literally. So,
Do you like salt?
oh, smell it.
Sure.
This is.
I mean, he loves
No,
salt.
Oh, you might love this
It's
then.
very
Here.
salty, but it's like.
I promise
it's
you,
something
that's
else.
all I'm giving you.
Oh, Lord.
That's it. Wait,
not
same
bad.
time.
Give it a-
Tristan, you got to come on camera, man. You got to show us. I'll just give you a little bit.
Give it a whiff.
Yeah, come in.
A whiff?
Yeah, give it a smell.
Okay.
Okay. Now just give it a little taste, and then let us know what you think.
I'm here for that.
Yeah,
Oh,
bro.
yeah.
You're into it?
A little yeasty, a little.
Yeah, he's
It's less offensive than I anticipated.
good.
Hugh Jackman told me to try it, and I trust him. So.
Well,
Like molasses.
A little molasses.
yeah, a little bit, yeah. So this is meant to be you lather toast, butter,
Right.
drip it with butter, and then you just a little tap it on, you know, like just a little bit, dab, dab, dab. You good? Anyway, this is my gift to you.
Thank you. It was on our list, so this is brilliant. Can I give you the yeah?
And we got plenty more snacks for you guys, but yeah, man, it's great to have you out here. I mean, what did you expect of Australia before you came? What was your preconceived idea? I know you just got here yesterday, but what was your idea of Australia before you got out here?
Yeah, so we're here for 13 days, seeing a lot of the country. We're not going up to Cairns, and we're not seeing the West Coast.
Okay.
But, you know, pretty much everything else. I think we hit 4 states total, so we're hitting a lot of the different areas. Yeah, I mean, first things first, blatant false advertising on the Sunshine Coast moniker.
Yeah, how rude. How rude.
We wanted to hit the quintessential Australian surf town, and we had our eyes on Byron Bay at first. Shot out on Instagram like, hey, where should we hit up in Australia? And a bunch of folks were like, well, instead of there, which is great, consider Noosa. And so we canceled the Airbnb in Byron Bay, and we came here
Oh, you
instead.
actually had an Airbnb?
Yeah, you know, free cancellation. So no sweat, no
that's
sweat,
good.
no
That's
sweat. Yeah.
Wait, so what's the weather in Byron Bay right now? Have you
No, I checked. It's the same.
Okay, good, okay, good.
First thing I checked yesterday, I was like, no, this is crazy. This is crazy.
That would suck, dude. That would suck. Could you imagine? Oh, man. Well, it's great to have you up here, man, and welcome to Australia. What are you guys doing out here? What's the mission?
We're creating some content. So we've got a couple of photo shoots with churches, one in Sydney, one in Melbourne. And we're taking the one in Sydney, we're just showing up with our iPhone, and we're making a YouTube video on iPhone photography for churches. You know, the cameras that we have now are so capable.
Oh, yeah.
But phone cameras have limitations relative to pro cameras. And so we're going to churches and we're actually doing the photo shoots to show like how it's done. And then we're doing another photo shoot in Melbourne, similar approach. But we also brought like 5 of those like disposable cameras
Oh, yeah.
from like our childhood.
Yeah.
Nice.
The Fujifilm ones. And so we're also doing another YouTube video on disposable camera photography because seeing a bit of a reminiscence with that or a resurgence
Yep.
with that type of photography. So we're doing that as well. And then we've also got the drone with us and we're just capturing a bunch of aerial photography and videography of your beautiful country.
That's awesome. So why Australia? Could have gone anywhere. Why did you come out here?
Well, we do go everywhere.
Yeah.
And so this was just one of the, dream trips that we wanted to hit.
Cool.
Obviously, Australia has a great diversity of topography and location. And so originally I had like a bucket list trip of the Kimberley, which is, the obscure outskirts far away in Australia,
Yeah.
my understanding.
Yes,
And so
very
we
far.
We scoped out that trip and I think it was Tristan, creative director who's here, who was like, if we do go to Australia, if we're going to make the time and, leave our kids and families, I'd prefer if we hit like kind of like just play the hits.
Yes.
Instead of just going
Of
like
course.
straight to the weird
Of
stuff.
course, yeah.
So yeah, it's his fault, really.
Yeah, well, good on you, Tristan. Thanks, mate. Oh, it's great to have you here, man. I really want to go back, rewind. We were chatting a little bit before, but who is Brady? Who are you, man? Like, I mean, my experience of you is like scrolling reels and this beautiful man just pops up on my reels talking about how church can be done better. I'm like, who is this guy? You have a captivating, I would say, spirit. You are very intentional about, I watch any video that comes up of yours. I've just watched the whole thing. There's something about what you do, and I know it's very intentional, but who are you behind the camera? Like, tell us about your family. Tell us about how you grew up. Like, who's Brady?
Yeah, so Canadian, if that's not already been mentioned. So I do feel a kinship with the Aussies,
yeah.
right?
It's the Queen, I think.
It's the Commonwealth.
Yeah.
I mean the King.
So sure, that's true. We were discussing this yesterday because Tristan is British. He's also Canadian, but he has, dual citizenship, both passports. And I was saying, I feel kinship with the Brits, but there's something about the Australian and Canadian connection. I think it's because like our countries aren't that old.
Yeah, true.
So like,
true.
I feel kinship with the Brits, but like also they've been around for so long.
Yeah.
Like they've got such history and we're like so young. So I think that's what kind of makes us feel that kinship. So I grew up a Christian household. Both of my parents were civil servants. So mom was a librarian, dad was a firefighter. And I grew up in this like really sleepy Baptist church. So like there was like 18 people. We didn't have microphones or like PA system. It was just like
choir?
2 acoustic guitars. Choir, cute. Pastor would just preach from the pulpit, like just his voice. And then we had 2 acoustic guitars. We did have an overhead. So when we played Days of Elijah, we had to get to the bridge. Like there was a, pastor's daughter out there like switching the slides to get to the bridge.
Yeah.
So that was like my experience. And it was not especially compelling to a young person. So I went to high school, and growing up, I excelled in academics and I excelled in athletics. I never really felt like I fit in with either group. Like I was not like cool enough for the jocks, and I was a little like too jockey for the nerds.
Okay, yeah.
So I get to high school, and I just don't really feel like I fit in anywhere. And then I get invited to this local youth group. I think my mom was like really wanting me to make faith my own, and she could tell like the church that we were in wasn't really doing it for me. So I go to this youth group and I go to this like weekend retreat.
Yeah.
And I show up and first of all, like they're not using overheads. And there was a drummer.
Oh.
And I was like, wow, this is different. And they start playing, which I would eventually learn, a lot of Aussie music. We just play Fire Fall Down. And this fire's falling down for like...
I'm about to fall down just thinking about it.
They just keep singing the same bridge over and over again. I was like, I'm kind of starting to feel the vibe here. And then they're starting to raise their hands. And I was like, never seen that before. And I'm just, catching the vibe, catching the spirit. And eventually I get really plugged into this youth group. And I just like fall in love with Jesus and fall in love with church. And so like any spare moment I have, I'm spending it at church. I'm volunteering. We're going youth groups on Friday.
How old are you at this point?
So 10th grade.
Okay, yeah.
So,
school.
14 years old
Yeah.
and 15 years old. And I'm just like leaving school on Friday, however, to get to the church, whatever it takes. If I have to walk, that's fine. Setting up, tearing down. And then I start picking up like musical instruments. I'm like, let's start learning the drums. And then I learn guitar. And then, I'm singing, not well, but I'm up there. And I, start having some feelings for this girl.
Oh, there it is.
And then I realized, what I love about this place is that this is the first place I've ever felt like just accepted for who I am. In all my eccentricities, like this is home for me. And so then I'm like, man, if I'm going to graduate, I don't know what I want to do with my life. Like this youth pastor has been so influential for me. Like I'd love to do that for the next generation. So then my girlfriend and I, we move across the country of Canada from East Coast to West Coast, and we both enroll in Bible college. And so I want to become a youth pastor, and she's in the worship ministry program. And then I'm loving that. Second year of Bible college, I start to realize, I don't know if I have the relational bandwidth to be a pastor.
Yeah.
Like these kids are going to need so much of me
I get it.
in my
I get
time.
it.
And I find like I'm enjoying my time with them, but I'm leaving exhausted. I'm not becoming recharged from this.
Sure.
So I'm like, uh-oh, this is a problem because I really just want to serve churches. And one of my like, internship placement pastors, he's like, hey, like come to our church, and instead of being a youth intern, be a media director. We're a new church plant. We're brand new. Here's like a camera. It's a Canon T3i. And the way I approach everything is with like a certain amount of obsession. And so I'm just going after it with everything I can, learning how to use this camera. And we create this vision video for the church.
Were you editing on Sony Vegas?
Oh, was it Vegas? I mean, I started on Vegas in high school.
Yeah.
Everyone's on Vegas.
Everyone, man.
Not for long.
A cracked version
Yeah.
of Vegas,
Oh, yeah,
to be clear.
of course.
Didn't pay for it. Yeah. No, it was Final Cut.
Oh, really?
Because they gave me a MacBook, and I was like, this is the coolest thing
yeah,
ever.
yeah,
Like, I'm not
yeah.
on Windows. I have a camera.
Yeah.
Final Cut. This is amazing. Like, a magnetic timeline. Look at this. Like, but I remember, so we go out to film this vision video, and I'm with my roommate, who would eventually become the first employee at our company.
Oh, that's cool.
We're on this intersection, and we have this camera. We didn't have a tripod, but I wanted to film this like time-lapse style of like B-roll. And so I'm like, okay, I'm just placing the camera on this like electrical box because we didn't have a tripod. And I'm taking photos of like cars as they drive through this intersection. I mean, we were out there for 15 minutes before I hear sirens. And this police officer walks up and he's like, son, what are you doing? Like this is 2012. Like people don't have phones that take take pictures. Like, they're like,
crazy.
what are you doing taking photos of these like cars? And I'm like, well, here's the thing. I work at a church. And he's like, I bet you do.
Sure you do. Yeah, sure.
And he's like, you should go home. And so we go home. And he's like, you should stop doing this. And I was like, this was the most embarrassing experience of my life. This is not for me. And I'm just like, I feel awful. But I tell myself, I was like, there was a church that made a vision video that looked like this. So surely, if I just stick to it, we're gonna find a spot where the police don't come. So we found these parking garages where we could get high enough where no one can see us. And we make this vision video. It's a great success. And then from there, it's just like picking up every skill I can, every skill that I can. And let's just speed up this story a little bit. Eventually, I'm going back to class, and I'm looking at my peers who are gonna become worship pastors, youth pastors, lead pastors in really small rural Canadian churches. And I'm like, they're going to be the ones that are tasked with setting up a Facebook page at this time in 2012 for their church. And so what I do is I'm like, okay, if I can learn these skills, so can they. So I start a YouTube channel, 2012. I start a podcast, 2012. I start a website, a blog, prochurchtools.com. It's the name of the company.
Wow, man. 2012.
2012.
Wow.
And I just start teaching every single thing that I'm learning. And that was the beginning of building an audience, which became a company, which, leads us
Now we're here.
eventually to where we are today.
That's crazy.
When I first started working at a church and they came to me and asking me all these questions, I had no idea. You were the first person I came across, because not only the first, probably
What
the
year
only.
was that? What year was that?
I think probably 2017. I'm like, I have no idea. I think they wanted to do, they're like, what's some good media ideas? I'm like, I don't know. I just started working here. Like, I've got no idea. And they're like Googling things and then pro church tool. What's it? And then click on it. And it was like, so insightful. Even like one of the things recently we did was just the idea of like, doing the announcements, live streaming them out at my local church. Like they were like, oh, what do we got? And then like that video, you literally just did one the other day, not the other day, probably start of the year or something. Was it your local church?
Yeah.
With the car and everything? Yeah,
Yeah,
that
that's
idea.
actually-
The creative director of my church called me. He's like, hey, we're trying to change it up. How can we do this? And then I like literally just forwarded him your video. I'm like, hey bro, I saw this video, do this. And they're implementing it. It's like so wild. It's like the resourceful of you just like going, we're in here and like constantly. I used you a lot actually to get across video ideas of like, because you're just full of stats and all these things of like how to reach people. What are the numbers? And especially during COVID as well, when like anyone I found that worked in the media department became so valuable at their local church during that time period. And it's like, you were just constantly there talking about like, how do we check up on people? How do we do this online and everything as well? Which like was really useful because they were like instantly, I had to become the expert on online church. I'm like, oh, I'm just the guy that films it.
The
I don't
broadcast.
know how do I put it on what Zoom, these things. So it was really useful just having you guys there, just more on even just the community side as well, just helping. And like you said, you learning and you just teaching. It's so funny.
Why are you so passionate about this stuff, bro? Like, what is it about media, film? Your bio says, navigating the biggest shift in 500 years. Like, what do you mean by that?
Yeah, so if people ask us what we do, we used to say, yeah, we help people with church graphics and websites and video, and they were like, I'm already bored of what you're saying. So we eventually we reworked it to say we help churches navigate the biggest communication shift in 500 years. And that's reference to the printing press. And the printing press, of course, kicked off the Protestant Reformation and was instrumental in the faith that we have today. And what made that so transformative during that time was anyone could have a Bible. And so people could read the words of Jesus in their language for the first time. And they didn't require a priest to disseminate the scriptures to them. And that is what was so critical in kicking off this shift, because people were like, the Bible says this, but you say this. And then this introduces a brand new, way of doing faith. Not to say that that's necessarily going to happen right now, but what is amazing is that there has been no time in human history where we have been able to distribute the good news of Jesus to the ends of the earth on platforms that are free.
Yeah, it's crazy.
We didn't choose to be born when we did, but I mean, one of the reasons I'm so passionate about it is because so I was born 91, and that was not by choice for me, just luck of the draw.
Your parents loved each other very much.
True. And so here we are, and it's just an amazing time to be alive right now. And yes, because of these platforms, there's change happening at this rapid pace. It can feel exhausting just trying to keep up with it. But the other side of that coin is the opportunity that exists is so immense. And there's just brand new ways of expressing this every day. It's just exciting.
So what are the main things that you guys do? Are you still doing the church graphics? You told me in the car, and sorry, I'm a bit ignorant on purpose because I wanted to make sure, I wanted to hear it from the horse's mouth, but you guys are doing 1,000.
I could have made that number up. It was a 100.
Yeah.
You guys are doing
Websites or something?
Yeah.
for free?
Yeah. So
What is this?
to provide a bit of context, so
Falsely advertised.
I started as a blog,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
And I had no idea if this was going to become a company or anything. I was making $1,200 a month as the media director at my church.
Which is good back then, right?
No, but
Well, that's what I'm on right now. So.
it's great. It's
Yeah,
great.
yeah.
CAD
Well
to
done.
AUD, I don't know. So I was newly married at that time. So my girlfriend, we move out, we get married. And so we're 21, and she's working insurance during the day and retail at night. And I'm working on a WordPress site during the day. I'm in a bathrobe. I'm like, babe, I installed a new plugin. And she's like, yeah, I have to get to my second job.
Yeah.
So,
That's
but
awesome.
good on you. And eventually what happens is I'm like, okay, I got to find a way to turn this into a business. And so what we do is I start offering my services to churches. I'll be like, I'll create your video announcements. So we start this website, provideoannouncements.com, which still exists.
Really?
Yeah.
Nice.
And what would happen is churches would send us their scripts, be like, here's our announcements for the week. And I would take this collapsible green screen in my 1-bedroom apartment, and I would set it up, and I would memorize their announcements,
bro.
and I would get on camera with my T3i, and I'd say, well, hey there, welcome to your church name. And I would read through their announcements. I'd then get into Premiere, because I had upgraded to Premiere at this point, and I would edit their announcement, and I would send it out. Yeah.
Right, and they would be so cool with this news anchor dude kid.
Yeah. That was
Looking
so
cute.
cool at the time. Yeah.
That's insane.
So we did that, and we were working with one point, we were doing more than 100 churches. So every week.
Did you have a network or something that you tapped into here? Did you know somebody who knew people, or you just cold call? How would you get the word
Well,
out?
no, because we had built this audience.
Yeah, but how did you build the audience? What?
We were making content. So you would go online, you'd be like, how to start a Facebook page for my church.
Got you, it's
and you'd
coming
find me. And then I'd say, listen, I'll give you the PDF guide on how to do this if you sign up for my newsletter.
Yeah.
Which we didn't call a newsletter, but basically what would happen is when I would publish new content, I would send it out to my email list. And so over the years, it was 100 churches, 1,000 churches.
You've been doing this a long. You did this before it was cool.
Yeah. and no, Josh hit on a great point, which was the only person.
Yeah.
I think I was on the email list for a little bit. I think I've since unsubscribed.
That's a smart, yeah.
I'm not trying to build a church website.
Yeah, fair enough.
So to get to the original question, we were doing this pro video announcements thing. And I start to realize, I'm like, I don't know if video announcements are going to be perpetually cool. And I was like,
were right.
this is the only thing we're doing. If these became uncool, And at this point, I've hired like 3 people, and they're all like, there's 150 church video announcements a week. Like,
Yeah, damn.
and so I hired my roommate. He was our first employee, and then I hired like 2 more people from my youth group. And I was like, guys, like this is what we're doing. And we were working now out of my garage, which we had renovated into an office. And in the back was now a studio, which no longer had a collapsible green screen. It was permanently set up. So yeah, it was big time for us.
Yeah.
And so we're like, okay, we're gonna do something else. And we had saved up like $1 million in the business. And we were like, what if we like made software? Like software feels like a long-term play, and it would be good. And so we create this church website platform called Nucleus. And we launch it, and within the first week of launching it, we had 1,055 churches sign up and pay us $49 a month for this website builder.
Wow.
Because we had built this audience.
Did you get someone to come in and develop for you? Like,
Yeah, we outsourced to this agency in like Tampa, Florida.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, so that was great at the beginning. And then a year later, they were like, yeah, we didn't really like sign up to like become like your business partners. And they were also like, we don't really know what we're doing. We've kind of learned on the job, but it's probably time to move on. And I was like, uh-oh.
Oh my gosh.
Because, you know, me and my friends, shockingly, did not know how to develop software.
No, of course.
So, yeah, the first year on that software was crazy. Eventually, we found these amazing business partners who we've been working with ever since.
And they're your devs now. They do all your stuff.
Yeah, and they're outstanding. So our team grew to eventually hiring beyond just my friends in high school to specialists that had experience in their areas of expertise. Anyway, 3,000 churches host their website on our software. And what's amazing about our software is that it's such a stable business. And we probably wouldn't be in business now if, I mean, I'm sure I would have figured it out. But if we were just doing video announcements and COVID had hit, like who knows? But 3 years before that, we had launched this website builder. And so we had multiple streams of revenue. They were very stable. In fact, Nucleus grew pretty substantially when COVID hit because it has an online giving component. And all these churches were like, we need to accept giving online. And so they...
So is this by accident, or like, are you strategically minded? Were you thinking, where's the next shift? I got to go and do this, or was this just accident? Like,
I don't know. I don't know if I want to take like too much credit for that. It's hard to know. One of the values that we have coded into our company is calculated delusion, and it's like this, paradoxical statement where to run an organization, you need to be pragmatic and you need to use the brain that God's given you. And the other part of it is like, if you have the belief that you can start something, like you kind of have to be a bit of a sicko. You have to be like a bit deluded to be like...
In a good way or a bad way?
Yeah, like in a good way. Like if you think you could do this, like, hey, I saw it. You're driving a Tesla, yes?
Yeah.
I also drive a Tesla.
Oh.
So like for
Model Y?
For what's that?
Model Y?
3.
Performance?
Yeah.
Nice. Anyway, sorry.
With the speed boost.
I digress.
So for Elon, all of his faults aside, like to think that you can like disrupt something, to think that you can do something, you have to be like a bit delusional.
True.
Like what?
I agree.
What makes you think you can do this? I don't know, man, but I just think I can. It's like, so you're deluded. Yes, but it's calculated delusion.
Yeah.
So I think that was a big part, just like recognizing and forecasting. One of the other values we have in our company is clear the runway. And the idea is like, we just want indefinite runway ahead of us, irrespective of how culture might change or shifts in the marketplace or whatever happens. We don't ever want to feel like, uh-oh, we're backed into this corner where now our company's in jeopardy or whatever it might mean. And so I have to then run the company and govern it by those values. So like, how do we clear the runway for whatever might come? And so that's probably what led to it.
I remember when I first started the company, and the original name of the company was called Sam Videography. I thought it was so cool at the time.
My company's name is Pro Church Tools, which is like definitively the worst name of any company of all time. So
it says what it is.
Sure.
So did Sam Videography though. It was like literally me rocking up to weddings filming Sam Videography. But I remember when I first started, I literally got so much, like I copped so much flack was what we would say. Like I copped so much, people would pay out on me like, oh, I can't believe he thinks he can do this. I used to talk like, I'm going to build this big agency. I'm going to change the world. I'm going to do all these things. Cause I guess I was a bit, and I like the term. And it used to really affect me, man. Like it used to really affect me when people would say things about me that weren't true, or that like they would use me as a joke, in front of their friends, or I would find out people would talk about me badly because I was just ready to just go for it. I wanted to do something. I wanted to do something for the Lord, but also do something generationally for my family. And people thought that was crazy, and they used to always hang a lot of crap on me. How did you deal with that? Did you have a lot of that? Have you still got a lot of that? We're talking about your tattoos before, and how people have made comments and things like that. How do you deal with the noise?
The nice thing about our journey with the company and my influence online is that it's been very gradual. So like we've been at this for 10 years. Like our company was officially incorporated 10 years this year. And before that, there was a couple of years of just sole proprietorship. Like where I had the website, but like we weren't a company, I don't know. And so like our audience now is like, we get many millions of impressions and views each month. But like it started where like my mom would edit the blog posts that I wrote because they weren't great. And what would happen was back then, commenting in blog culture was very important for SEO, but also for social proof that like this blog is worth listening to because like, look, there's comments, there's community. So what my mom would do was she would create like several aliases and then she would jump into the comments.
Yeah, really.
Yes.
And basically create like comments that I thought were like, this is what people are thinking in their head. They're going to ask this question based on what I've written. So she would ask them and then I would respond to them.
What a mom.
really
That's
smart.
amazing.
And then eventually like real people commented. And 5 years later, she was like, I think I can stop with the aliases. I was like, yeah, I think you're right, Mom. Like there's a big enough community where, but we kind of had to like, prime the pump in that way.
Yeah, sure.
So you get used to it over time. Like, and sometimes the internet is useful. For instance, I had enough people on YouTube say like, do you shave your eyebrows? To realize that, oh, like I have incredibly blonde features. So now I get my eyebrows tinted every month. And no one would say that to my face because either it was too cruel or like, like you don't see that when you like see a person every single
I
day.
didn't even notice though.
Well, because they're tinted.
So did that affect you?
The first time, but then the second time I was like, you know what? This is a blessing.
And
Someone,
what do you mean it's a blessing? Like what?
well, now you can see my eyebrows.
Blessing in disguise.
I never would have known.
Yeah. So you just kind of like, are you pretty resilient, would you say, in terms of, if somebody says something about you or, oh, I can't believe Brady, he's saying he's going to build this big business. Like, it just doesn't really affect you. It's like water off a duck's back.
Yeah, I maybe it's just exposure therapy. Like the internet is going to invite people that say bad things about you. And you just get used to it over time. But I mean, I'm also like in a pretty generous space. Like the church space is pretty inviting.
Yeah, sure.
I don't ever talk about theology.
True.
So all I'm like is like, here's a good camera for your church. And people are like, okay, fine. Like this.
Yeah. What are you going to say to that? Yeah, it's
true.
true. Yeah, you're not very, do you have to steer clear from being not controversial, but do you have anyone that looks over the content you're putting out, or you feel like you've got a pretty good feel on not going right or left, so to speak?
Yeah, at this state of the game, I'm pretty good at writing, and in the writing that you do, you want to basically bake in questions to provide moments where you can inject disclaimers and also respond to objections as they'll be coming up in the mind of people that are listening and watching your content. And so that's a really good way of also building attention and trust with people, is if you can make a statement and then introduce. Now, you might be wondering, and then say what their subconscious objection is and then answer it. You're like, oh, okay. Not only has this person had this idea, but they've thought about the problem with the idea. Now I can trust this idea because they've considered the potential drawbacks. And so that's like, part of writing that you gain over the years. Because at first you just write and then people go, why are you dumb? And then they say this, this, and this. You're like, oh, okay, next time when I say this, I'll then put in that right after. And so you just, again, when you do it for 10 years and you start with nobody, like we've never had a moment where we went from like 0 to 1 million people. And so there was never a moment where I was like, oh my goodness, there's all these people where suddenly I have to deal with that. That would have been really challenging. But because it was so gradual, I talk about the 3 C's, like in terms of leadership. There's character, capacity, and competency. And like, if you have anything in your business, organization, or life scale beyond those things where you're responsible for them, now you're in a precarious situation. Like if you're being asked to do things beyond your competency level, beyond your ability to figure it out, because we're creative, so we've all been like, I don't know how to do this, but I can figure it out. Sure.
Yeah.
But like if you're in a place where you're being asked more than your character can like back up, like that's in a bad spot. It's been so gradual that all those things have basically scaled up as our audience has scaled up. So as I have more responsibility, my competency, character, and capacity have increased as well.
That's really good. And I think like when you're working with churches, I've been saying this to Josh, this whole new Kingdom Creatives idea that we're doing, like shifting from, a agency that works in the marketplace and we very much just work with brands and businesses, going to the church. I'm very careful about how we price, how we treat. This is the bride of Christ we're talking about. We're not talking about, someone with bucket loads of money. So how have you, I guess, balanced the way you because a lot of people would say, oh, it's the church, you should just do it for free. Or it's the church, you should just give it all away for free, right? But you guys don't. It's a subscription, and so you are running. Are you guys not for profit, or is it it's a for profit business?
It's a for-profit business.
So how have you reconciled, or have you needed to reconcile the fact that you're profiting off the church? The only reason I ask is because people have asked me, like, do you feel right about this? Like, does this feel like the right thing that you're charging churches? Now, I know my answer, but I'm interested to see what you think about that.
It's also funny because I think like Australian culture and Canadian culture are very similar in this way.
Tall poppy syndrome.
Yeah, precisely.
Yeah.
So you don't tend to get that same pushback in as many circles anyways, in the States, let's say.
Definitely.
So the great thing about our business is that 99% of people that follow us will never give us a dime. Because I've had a YouTube channel for 10 years, podcast for 10 years, blog for 10 years, and we just give away like everything that I learn, I just give it away.
Wow, man.
And we don't profit off of our content, so we don't sell sponsorships. We don't do brand deals.
Oh, really?
There's no affiliate links. So every single thing that you see on our YouTube channel is not monetized.
Wow.
It's like anything that you see of us, it's just like, that's just my thoughts. Unadulterated. There's like not like, oh, if you click the link, I'll get money when you buy the camera that I mentioned.
Really?
Like, there's none of that. We make money with the software. Like sometimes there's a misunderstanding of my work. They're like, oh, Brady's like an influencer. Like, no. I run a software company. Like we have 30 employees. We have multi-million-dollar budget to manage. Like that's the company that I run. I also make content. Why? Because the best way to build a business is to create content, build attention, build trust, build an audience, and then say, oh, by the way, if you want to buy something, we have this thing. And then they're like, oh, I'd much prefer to host my website on your platform because I like what you talk about rather than some other church website platform that I have no relationship with.
Have you read The Story Brand?
Yes.
Yeah, it very much sounds like it.
Yeah, and you know, before Donald Miller came around and introduced StoryBrand, like there were these like blogs and like these smaller internet people that were like basically championing the same idea.
Yeah, right.
And that was what was formational for me when I was starting the business. They're like, look, nobody knows who you are. You're nobody. And I was like, that's right, that's me. They're like, if you make stuff of value, you'll have like deposited that in the life of someone. They're more likely to trust you. And you've built equity with that person. Eventually, someone will be like, cool, maybe I'll give you some money. And I was like, all right, sounds like a plan to me. And so even what Josh mentioned earlier, we have this website platform. And earlier this year, we announced like our most ambitious project ever. It's like we were gonna give 1,000 church websites free makeovers. And so what we do is we'll send a photographer to a church in person and we'll cover the cost. And they're gonna do a photo shoot at this church.
It's insane.
We're gonna take those photos and we're gonna build them a website for free. Then we get on a call with this church. We're like, here's your brand new website, like makeover, move that bus. Like here's like your new.
So they just hit you up online. They just say, hey, we want a new website.
Yeah, like we had 2,000 churches apply within like the first 3 months of like launching this campaign. And so we've delivered like 400 so far.
Wow.
And so we're gonna do 524 and then 525. So
Tell me about this. Why? That doesn't seem like a very smart business decision.
well, websites have two costs. There's the cost to build the site and there's the cost to host the site. It's like a vehicle. You have to buy the vehicle, and then if you're not driving a Tesla, you have to pay for the gas to like keep the vehicle going. So websites are the same way. Website platform from a business side is really stable because like people don't really change their website that often. The inverse of that is that it's really hard to like gain new customers because people don't change their website that often. And so we were like, we had all these churches that were like, we'd love to host our website on Nucleus, but like I don't have the time to redo my website. Like it's this whole big thing. And so I was like, okay, can we come up with this makeover idea? The reason we send photographers to churches in person is because we used to make websites for churches. And our belief is that the best church websites are the ones that really emphasize visuals and photos because like the people are the church.
Yeah, that's
and so
right.
that's what I want to see.
Yeah, I love that.
And so we'd say, send us your photos, church. And they'd send us their photos. And I was
Rash.
like, Lord, have mercy. Like this is not representative of the beauty of this church in person.
Yeah.
I'm confident of that. I was like, what are we going to do? If only we could build a network of photographers that love the church all around the world. Who could do that? And I was like, oh, wait, I can do that. So I put out an application. I was like, hey, do you want to join our church photographer network? We'd love to like pay you to go to churches and shoot photos.
Wow.
And then thousands of photographers were like, yes. So we have a giant church.
Literally thousands.
Yeah, so we have a giant church photographer network on a Google map, and we just have pins all around the world.
Really?
So when a church applies, they're like, we want our website done, and they say like, we're in New Zealand, or we're in Australia. I'm like, oh yeah, I got some people there. And then we say, do you want to shoot this church? And they're like, yeah, great. So then we send that photographer there, and then we have these great photos. We redo the site, and the site build is free. The photographer is free. And then we say, church, like if you want this site, like you just have to pay the hosting cost. And we're very clear with that up front when a church applies. Like this is the hosting cost. It's $49 a month. It's a very competitive hosting cost relative to like, you know, Squarespace and all these other platforms. and we'll build you the site for free. We'll do the photo shoot.
Man.
And then they're like, great, we'll do that. And so then it is an upfront cost for our business. But instead of like running an ad or like doing a billboard, which you would do for an online company,
marketing costs, yeah.
exactly. That's the customer acquisition cost.
Wow.
It's at a loss for the first year, but churches run your website for 10 years on your platform. And so, and that's where like, if you run a profitable company, you can take the money and say, yes, I will pay all of this upfront cost to acquire these customers. And what's amazing too, is that then these churches are really excited because they've never seen their church look like this.
Yeah, you've
And
had
they
to
have
win
this
them first.
brand new, beautiful
so
website.
Good, man.
We get on a call with them, we deliver it to them. Now they're excited. It's not like this nuisance of changing your site.
Yeah.
And then,
Wow, that's Brady.
So
I think
good.
everyone knows you as the Pro Church Tools guy, but I'm kind of interested. What's the like Brady leadership position? So if you've gone from like yourself starting a little blog, your mum commenting, to now you said like 30 people,
yeah.
like report to you essentially and look to you for vision. What's like that growth been for you in like that way and like steering the ship per se, like with that growth? Because that's insane.
It's big growth.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really messed that up because the reason I didn't want to be a youth pastor was because I was like, I don't have the relational bandwidth for this. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then
preaching
I
to
was
the
like,
choir.
this is great. Like, so when we were living in Edmonton, which is where I went to Bible college, that's the most northern major metropolis in like North America. Like there's a show we have called Ice Road Truckers.
Oh, yeah, I love that show.
That's like where that was. So like
That's where your church was.
yeah, that's
Like
where we lived.
legitimately in that town.
Yeah, well, in that region.
area.
Like so, like
Damn.
that. So like they don't plow the roads there. Like everyone drives a giant truck. Not me, because I was poor and in college. So like my car was not suitable for the roads.
Yeah.
I just remember being like, I just want to like write and stay at home and have a family. This is what I want, and that's what the business afforded me. Until eventually I needed to hire people, and then
Are you introverted or extroverted?
introverted in the
Oh,
sense
really?
that like I love spending time with people, but it doesn't recharge me. And so like I need time on my own, and my best work is done like tinkering in the lab.
Okay. Yeah.
So the leadership part has been like a really stretching part of the job for me. And so we've done a couple things. One, we've always believed in like compensating the people that work with us very well. So like we hit a really important benchmark for us last year where it was like every employee with us that's been with us since day one has a top 10% salary in Canada. What that buys you literally is like a lot of relational equity where like when you mess up, like there's grace for that because
yeah.
like people aren't stressed at home.
Yeah.
Like they can take care of their families. Like our employees bought homes and they
Yeah, I
had
love that, man.
kids
Awesome.
I love that.
and they weren't like scraping to get by. And so like when they have to come to me and they're like, hey, we're having a problem, they're not coming to that with like, oh, I'm already resentful and bitter towards you. And then what we had to do was we had to codify language and values to say, hey, if we're going to, first of all, hire friends and then all work together, which is amazing, but there's a reason why there's that saying, like, don't miss like family and business or friends and business. We had to codify values to say, if we want to do this, we have to choose to live by these values. So one of them is like, say the quiet part out loud. So we just have no tolerance for any type of
We're taking that.
that's
We're
good.
taking that. Thank you.
no bitterness growing beneath the surface. So like if there's an issue, we're gonna just hash it out. Say the quiet part out loud. It's gonna hurt,
Yeah, I like that.
but it's gonna hurt now. That's way better than it blowing up in like 2 years.
true.
So that's another thing that we've done. And then our biggest belief is like in relational longevity. And because the reality is that most relationships are not for life. And what happens is whether it's life or work or kids, it's like you have these friends and you see them less and less and less. And I was like, what I would love for this business is like, I want my friends to stay in my life. I love to be friends with them in 10 years and in 20 years. Like, why wouldn't I be? Probably because they got a job and had to move away and I don't get to see them as much as I want. That's not by choice. So if we're gonna all work together, we'll stay here and we'll be friends together. And now we've been friends for 15 years,
I love that, man.
20 years, I guess.
20 for you two?
Like 15 to 33, so 18?
Damn.
Like,
Do you get sick of each other yet or what?
no, because we have values.
Ah.
No, like
Yeah,
this is
Tristan's like not answering the question.
no, this is a great example. Yesterday, I was not nice to Tristan yesterday. I said something that I shouldn't have said.
Okay.
And I came over and he was a bit quiet in the corner. And he was like,
The corner.
Well, he was working, you know? and I asked him a question. He was like, yeah, he's just a little short with me. And I was like, what is it? And he was like, well, you know, you were a bit of a there. You were being a bit.
Did you know you were a bleep?
Yeah.
Okay.
But also like, and we hashed it out together. He was like, why did you do that? And I was like, well, I was in the middle of a task and you asked a question and I thought, does he need to ask me this question? And then as I'm telling it out loud, I'm like, you are so dumb. Like, do you hear the words that you're saying? Like, yeah, you inconvenienced me, and so I treated you poorly. It's like, okay, that's bad behavior. And I said, you're right. That was on me, 100% on me. I apologize. And he's like, apology accepted. We moved on.
Yeah, I love that.
We have to have those moments because eventually there's going to be friction in any relationship. And if you're in a healthy marriage, you become skilled at conflict resolution. Those skills aren't always developed in friendships because like you're either not spending enough time together or you're just like, I'm not going to go there. But like if you're going to work together and one of us is going to write the other's paycheck, like you have to be able to talk about things that are uncomfortable. You have to be skilled or at least practiced or at least dedicated to conflict resolution. And you have to fight for not allowing bitterness to plant a seed anywhere.
This is helpful for us. We're business partners too.
I've never actually thought of the relation between like a healthy marriage and like
we don't kiss though.
The conflict you have there. It's like our wives say we're married to each other.
Yeah, they do.
But we do bicker sometimes as well, which is good. But that's like a really good, I've never thought of that comparison. Some like some friends I have in my life, it's like, I'm just like, things might happen. And I've never thought to like, I'm just not going to go there. I'll be over it in like a couple of weeks or whatever. But that's so interesting.
Yeah, what was the term, like the unspoken things or?
Say the quiet part out loud.
Say the quiet part. That's so powerful. Because a healthy marriage, you would do that with your spouse and everything.
You have to.
You have to because otherwise the other person will be like, what's going on eventually? Like, I mean, at least for me, like I can bury it, but like eventually I'll be like, can we talk about this? Like,
so you see the people you work with so much.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
More than your spouse sometimes.
Yeah.
Just shifting a little bit, I've noticed in churches, we're very good, at least in our tradition, like that Pentecostal tradition, where we're very good at,
music.
Yeah, stewarding the musicians. You know, if you're creative, you're a musician. And a big heart behind Kingdom Creatives is this idea of like, well, how can we steward other creatives better? What about the people who are good at pottery? What about the people who are good at painting? What about the video editors, you know, who actually really love it, but there's almost not a platform for them? Are you seeing this culture in churches that we're good at stewarding some types of creativity, but we're not good at stewarding others, and why?
Well, I think that music is a biblical through line. And it's been a part of church for, generations.
True.
Since church started.
Yeah.
And so like there's a long history there.
True.
And then tech comes around. We talked about Sony Vegas. Like I remember like downloading this video editor and I could edit a video on a computer. I remember that as like a first time thing within the last 15 years.
Yeah.
And so like all of this new tech has birthed all of these new creatives and all of these new ways of taking the wisdom of scripture, the message of Jesus, and sharing it with the world. And if you look at some of the data for Gen Z, Gen Alpha even, it's like they all like idolize YouTubers and they all want to be creatives. And so there is going to be, by necessity, churches are going to have to get better at shepherding and encouraging this type of creativity because it's going to be such a huge thing. Like, and I can even see it in the 10 years that we've run this business. Like, there was really just me being like, hey, video announcements for churches. And now there's like so many voices, which is great because like I am just one voice and I have like certain perspectives on things, but that's just my perspective. And we need more of that. And so I think there's going to be a big generational shift.
How do you think pastors can, or leaders in churches, how do you think that they can, help build up and encourage and give a voice or give a platform or a place for, the video editors, the guys who are behind the camera that never get seen, that it's not glorified, like how do you think we can help steward them or lead them better?
I think everyone wants to feel known and needed. And so if you are leading someone of any kind, that person wants to feel like you know them and that they like are a really crucial part of what you're doing. There's a certain person on our team who's been very vocal about this. And they were at one point like leading that video announcement side of the company. And this person would tell you that at that point, I was not especially excited about that department in our company because like video announcements were not on an upward trajectory anymore. And so we knew that we were working with these churches that still wanted to work on this, but like that part of the company in a lot of ways was like dying. And yet that was like the thing that he was responsible for. And it was hard for him to get excited about this because I wasn't excited about it.
Yeah, true.
And eventually a person came along who was really excited about video announcements and we gave that company just to that person. We're like, here, take this. Because we were just gonna shut it down.
Wow.
And they were like, no, like I'd love to run it. And I was like, cool, here, take it.
Really?
And now they run it, and it's been a blessing to their family, and it's been a blessing to not be on my plate anymore.
Double the blessings.
And it's been a blessing for this employee because they're now in charge of makeovers, those website makeovers.
Oh, really?
Cool.
And like the countenance of this person, the demeanor, and their like vigor for their job has been night and day. And at one point we were like, hey, it seems like you're thriving here. It's like, yeah, because like I am so proud of the work that I'm doing.
Wow.
And at least for this person, this might not be true for everyone. Like some people, I have another guy on my team, and like it doesn't matter what I give him, he's just like, I will do this task now. And like if you ask him to like problem solve, he'll be like, like that might not be his strength.
Sure.
But if you're like, this is the system, work the system. He's like, this will be so efficient. I will do this.
I will do this.
And they do it quicker. Like, you walk 10 around and it's done. And you're like,
Yeah. What else is there to do? Yeah.
He doesn't need pride in his work in the same way. Just like the fact that like he's on the team is the pride. But this other one needed like a specific job where he knew he was contributing in a way that the company needed. And now that he's in that place, like night and day difference. So that's a good example of feeling known and needed. Known in that he had a specific like wiring within him that he needed to feel like proud of his work, and then needed obviously now that he's in this project that like is so important to what we're doing and is blessing so many churches.
I guess, yeah, on the, how Sam said, like what creative teams can do better. What do you think is something, you've probably spoken about it so many times, but would be good to just have on, like, what do you think something churches in this new media type world, what's something they do well that you think, oh yeah, they're picking up here, but what's something you think there's a big gap that you've seen in a lot of churches?
Churches are pretty good at responding to what's happening in like the majority of the world. So when easy example of that is like in 2014, I was like, hey churches, social media is a great way to share your message with the world. And they were like, that's weird. 2024, I don't have to explain that to any church.
Yeah, it's true.
In 2014 to 2018, I would publish social posts to the people that followed me, and I said, in 10 years, and I would usually use like the next generation's name. So I'd say, when millennials are lead pastors, we will not have conversations about should we be on social media. Like that, we just will never have that conversation. We'll have different conversations, but right then the conversation was, should churches be on social? I'd have to write posts, I'd have to publish on social, do entire videos dedicated to like, here's why your church should be on social. Here's a biblical explanation for it. Like churches needed that because they were like, why should we be on here? Because like it wasn't fully understood yet. Churches don't have more understanding for it now, but like everything's on social, so they don't feel like they need an explanation for it. What's curious about that is that they felt like they needed a biblical explanation then because it wasn't like just cultural norm.
Right.
Now it's cultural norm, so they're there. So like that wasn't missional. That was just, we're observing what's happening and we're just kind of going with it, which is kind of strange. You would think that churches would be missional about everything. We're not. We kind of just do it because this is the way it's always been.
Yeah, sure.
And so we always talk about mission over method because it's really easy to get married to the method of doing things. This is how I like doing things. And we have to remember this as like younger people, because in 10 to 20 years, what is maybe missional won't be familiar to us. And when something's not familiar to you, this is just human nature, you are resistant to it. And so we'll have young people saying, can we try this? And we'll be like, I don't really know, because it's not familiar to us. And at that point, we'll be elevating method over mission. And what churches tend to do is they take method and they put it in the place of mission and they idolize it. And they say like, this is actually our mission. And it's not, it's just, that's how it's always been done.
Wow.
So you would say that churches are typically bad at adapting to new methods?
They're just bad at like taking their mission and applying it to what's happening.
Yeah. I see what you're saying. Yeah.
Thing becomes popular enough and they're like, yeah, we're all going to do this. If you ask them why, they wouldn't necessarily know why, but the fact that it's become so culturally normal.
Some people might push back on that and say like, well, we deliberately hold on to tradition, you know, like we work with a bunch of companies, one being Alpha work with the global church.
Yep.
So every kind of network. And a lot of people would say, well, we actually think that holding to tradition, sacrament tradition, is what sets us apart. What would you say to that? Is that okay to have that group of people there holding on to tradition, sacrament? They don't want to maybe subscribe to what's cool in the culture or what's in. Is that a detriment to them, do you think?
No, so long as it's tied to the mission. If a church wants to say, or a group of people in the church want to say, we do this because our church's mission is X, and so we believe that being faithful to that mission is this, more power to you. but that's not how it gets explained.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure what tradition we're really talking about here, but let's say the tradition is I go to a church and I'm like, hey, if you were active on social, you'd like reach people locally. And they're like, well, we actually prefer printed mailers.
Yeah.
And I say, okay, what if I could tell you that you could reach more people for less money?
Yeah. Yeah.
They'd say, no. Like, okay, so now this is not mission.
Yeah,
because I
sure.
feel like missionally,
True.
you want to reach people. And I can do it in a way that's more cost effective and you can reach more people. So you'll be more efficient in the mission and you'll fulfill the mission to a greater extent. If you're saying no to that, it's either because you have a really good counter argument to mine that says, actually, we believe fulfillment of mission is better served in this way, or you just have your method as your mission and you're not going to acknowledge it.
That's really good. You should write a book on that.
Yeah, books. I've been pretty resistant to that.
Yeah,
to this
have you?
point.
Why?
Yeah.
You should write a book.
If I do something, I tend to do it like, all out kind of
You're a
way.
sicko.
Yeah.
You're a sicko.
I'm also, 33. Like maybe by the time I'm 35 or 40,
Yeah, nice.
I'll feel like I'm ready.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like you, I'm picking up, and I even said it to you before we got on, like I feel like you're just very regimented, very, you're thoughtful in what you say, like, is that something that's come naturally? You're articulate. Is that natural to you to be like this, or have you had to work on it?
I think one of my biggest skills that served me well from the beginning was the ability to take ideas that are complex to people and make them accessible. And
That's the business kind of that you have, right?
yeah, and that's it. What that does is it creates aha moments for people where what was previously confusing becomes understandable. And that is a way to build like instant trust with someone. And so if you come across a social media post of mine, which is probably today how we reach new audiences most easily,
Sure.
where previously it was like blog posts. If I can share something to you, you're like, oh wow, I've never thought about it that way before. That's a great way to build rapport with someone that then maybe they follow, or maybe they're more likely to listen the second time they see a post of mine. And so attention is the most valuable commodity that a church can possess. It's the most valuable commodity any one of us can possess. Attention, when captured well and honored, becomes trust.
Sure.
And trust is like, nothing else.
Yeah. And you go.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I love how it's like just hearing your whole story and everything. It's so interesting how it's like what you almost essentially like preach all the time is like what's happened to yourself. It's like the longevity of just continually post, continuing to be present has built over time. And it's like, what would you say to those pastors that like maybe are just still a bit resistant to embrace it, even though like looking at you, they've seen the growth, but there's still that resistance almost.
To social media?
Yeah, towards social media, like live streaming, like really embracing it.
It's the number one question I've gotten in 15 years, like cool post, but how does it help
Yeah.
our church?
Yeah.
And there are a number of ways that I help pastors get to the answer to that question. The first thing I say is social is a marathon, not a sprint. So you wouldn't evaluate a small group ministry after 2 weeks and say like, it's not working and axe it. So like approach your social ministry in the same way. Like start with a year commitment at least. What I tell churches is there's no way we can ever have a single post and look at it and say, look, that led to 22 baptisms or 11 new recurring givers. It's never gonna happen. But what social should also not be is this complete black box where you're like, it seems important, but I don't know how it works at all and translates to in-person growth or in-person fulfillment of mission. So we have this like diagram and it's just a triangle. So imagine a triangle and we call it the social ministry mountain. And the social ministry mountain is a triangle with 4 layers. And at the top is the summit. And this is when we can tangibly point to our online efforts translating to in-person. To get there, you have to scale the first 3 layers on the mountain. And the base layer of the mountain, the singular non-negotiable of social for churches and anyone else, is what we call no weeks off. This is the rhythm of being active on social that you have to commit to. No weeks off. Very few churches are able to achieve it indefinitely. What happens is we have a person who's in charge because they're young and they wear multiple hats, like we all do at church, and you're posting and it's doing great, but then you're pulled onto something else. And then you take a couple weeks off, you take a month off, you take 2 months off. And then you have to build up this momentum all over again. Social, we tend to obsess over things on social that don't matter. Post timing, hashtags, things that are measurably no difference making whatsoever. What matters is a consistent publishing calendar, staying consistent, no weeks off. So that's the first layer. Once you've committed to that, church, great. Now we're going to move to the next thing. And the next layer on the social ministry mountain we call viral for me posts. And a viral for me post is anything that you publish that reaches 10x the audience of a typical post of yours. That's when you can say, look, we did something. There was something about our church's message that intersected with the needs of the broader community, and it introduced our church to new people for the very first time. That's exciting. So the viral for me posts.
That's cool.
The more of those that you stockpile, the sooner you can hit the third layer on the social ministry mountain, which we call the 10x growth rate. Now we're gonna get into some numbers here, so just stay with me.
I love it. I love it.
We measure this by 4% monthly growth on social. It's pretty modest, but when you compound that week over week, month over month, year over year,
4%.
it's 10x growth over 5 years. So just 4% growth a month is 10x growth over 5 years. That's the type of growth on social that, you know, in 2015, you could only get through like spending money on ads.
Yeah, right.
What's amazing about the algorithms now is like, if you think about what you see, probably half of your feed is from accounts that you do not follow.
Yeah, it's true.
That same real estate is existing on every single device in your church's local area. So if you make good content,
True.
you can introduce yourself to people.
Wow.
The 10x growth rate. From there, the top of the mountain, we call this crossover events. So crossover events are pastor gets recognized in person. We have this happen all the time. Hey, are you a pastor? You've been on my social media feed these last couple of weeks.
Really?
People show up and they say, oh yeah, I heard about your church on social when they return the visitor card. Conversations in the lobby with new families. This one happens all the time. Yeah, we were following online for a little while before we finally decided to check you out.
Yeah, wow.
You notice those things and then you start to like track them. Churches say to me, how do I know which post matters to like a person coming? And I say, which post of mine led you to book this call? And they go, I don't know. And I go, exactly. There's this thing in marketing we call the rule of 7. 7 touch points before a person will take a next step with an organization.
Yep.
So you saw a post of mine, you saw another post of mine, you followed, I sent you an email, you watched a YouTube video of mine. In that YouTube video, the third one you watched, I said, we have a program, you can like learn more about it. If you want to work with us one-on-one, you booked a call. Same thing with your church. Someone sees a preaching clip, they drive by the church, someone tells them, oh yeah, my kid went to VBS at that church last year, it was great. You see another social post, you visit their website, oh, okay, cool, you forget about it. 2 months later, something bad happens in your life, and man, maybe I just need to make a change.
Yeah,
What was that church again? You track it down, you visit in person, all because you were first introduced to that church on social.
Yeah, I love
Yeah,
that.
you need to write a book. Straight up. That's gold.
awesome.
That's actual gold, man.
That's so good.
I'm wondering if I can shift a little bit
Please.
and take your time to think about this one. But what breaks your heart? Like what, oftentimes, a bit of context, we may do things or act in a certain way or build businesses or preach that sermon or whatever because there's something that breaks your heart and you want to speak to that. Something that breaks my heart is torn up families where single moms or single dads trying to do it, because that's my context, right? That broke my heart as a kid. And I think through that lens often.
Yeah.
And you know, the people that make me cry when I'm driving down the street is usually the mum with the kid by themselves and the kid screaming and they want to rip their hair out, you know. But what breaks your heart? Like, what is it that breaks your heart? And I want to know how that ties into what you do.
Specifically in the context of church or personal?
Personal, life. If you're driving down the street and you see something, or questions for you too, I want you to answer it as well. But what is it that in life that gets you emotional or breaks your heart?
Yeah, like we've talked about the values that are codified into our business. And those values that I also have tattooed on me are all lessons that we've learned from challenging times. And so we've like, okay, in the moment, we were facing a challenge that was really tough. We didn't know how to figure it out. And in hindsight, we realized that we did something that would probably serve us well the next time we encounter something. Let's codify this into a value so that we know we can live by this again. And so much of it comes down to like relational longevity. And so the inverse of that is what I'm afraid of.
The breakdown.
The thought of like having a person in my life and then like I don't see them anymore. Or like not being able to spend time with my daughter because I have to provide for my family.
Yeah.
And I have to go to this job that like sucks the life out of me. And then I physically am away from them. You know, when my wife was working at insurance and retail at night, like we'd been married for 1 year. And in that 1 year, I saw like the life get sucked out of her from that terrible insurance job where people were miserable every single day. And we were living in the coldest place on earth, which also sucked for us anyway. So we were not built different. We were built the same.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't know what I have to do, but like, I don't want her to have to go to this job for the next 30 years so that we can like pay our bills. Like I will do whatever it takes to like not let that happen. And for me, freedom of time has always been like the ultimate like thing that I want to have. I want to have the time to spend with my kids, to spend with my family, to spend with my friends, to come visit new countries. Like if I can have that and not be tied to a schedule that somebody else is making for me, like I want that.
Yeah, it's awesome.
And then the problem was I started hiring people and I was like, oh, like now I'm responsible for others. And how do we like create freedom of time for them as much as possible, because they don't run the business. So like we have a hybrid work week where they're Monday and Friday at home and then Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday in the office.
Oh, cool.
And so like that gives them back time at home that otherwise wouldn't have been, possible.
Nice.
So just the thought of like the truth of life is that what happens to every one of us is that you lose the people you love. So my mom, who wrote those blog posts, the comments, she's not here anymore. She got cancer and she died when I was like 26, 27.
Oh, wow.
And she was my like idol, my mentor, my number one in life. If you knew my mom, you knew me.
She
were like,
sounds amazing, man.
Yeah.
Like, the fact that she did the stuff, I was like,
awesome.
we were the same in so many ways. And, we prayed, we did everything we could. She got all the treatment and it didn't work out that way. And that's true. Like we see each other on the other side, but we will lose the people that we love.
Wow.
And so every single thing that I do is about like, I want to spend every moment I can with the people I love on my terms. And
That's awesome.
losing that would, that's the thing that I'm trying to avoid.
Wow. That's fun.
breaks your heart.
Yeah, I think I always feel for the little chubby kids, because I was one, but that's a more personal story. That's not real. I think what really hurts me is I think sometimes, especially when I was young, I've always struggled with the when I feel like I'm alone, and it's actually something Sam's personally hated, which is really funny. How if I'm with someone, my phone does not exist.
Yeah, I hate that because I need to talk to him about work.
Like literally, because I am so aware of how I felt growing up, of like feeling isolated, alone, and not having friends and weird, that it's like, it's a weird thing. It's like, I'm not great at connecting on phone or anything, because if I'm with someone, I'm 100% in that moment, because I feel there is so much value being in the presence of actually another human being that I'm with, whether it's my wife, Sam, or whoever, whatever situation it is. It's like, I just like know how important that is, to be in that one-on-one connection, that I'm like, oh, it doesn't really matter what's happening in the outside world, because I'm with the people I want to be with, and I want to make sure they feel like I am in the room with them. I'm not like, oh, let's hang out, but I'm going to be on my phone or doing stuff. It's like something that I've always felt like connecting with people, but like actually connecting and being present. And there's like so many things where it's like, especially it's just more prominent, where it's like, you can see those photos where everyone's hanging out, but they're just all on their phone scrolling, and they're like, there's no actual connection happening there. And that's something that I'm like very intentional about, like trying to be present in every situation. And I never want to be like distant in the room. Even like one day when I have kids or something, I don't want to be too busy working or not present with them, because I just know how important that is.
But you know what? I think that is going to serve you incredibly well, because I'm pretty confident that, how like every generation is like, the parents messed up for that generation. It's like, oh, they weren't emotionally available. Like our grandparents, or our parents, but they whatever it might be. I worry for myself, and like for our generation, like our kids are going to grow up and be like, man, like they were just always on the phones. Like I think we're the first generation to like have them.
Yeah.
And I don't think we've quite. And when I say we, like I am culprit number one. Like I don't think we've quite figured it out yet.
Yeah, I know.
And
Me too.
What we know about device usage is that it's all just picked up through osmosis. So if you have a child who's like really on the devices, like it's probably because the parent is.
Yeah.
And because they see the behavior and it just gets mirrored. That, we haven't talked about parenting, but that's my number one like parenting belief, is that it's all through osmosis. So anytime there's like a behavioral issue or my kids are having trouble, I'm like, you know what? If I'm a good human, my wife's a good human, and we're happily married and we love each other and we're with these kids all the time, it's gonna figure itself out. What's also true though, is if I have a bad habit, like that phone stuff, that's also gonna be picked up by them. And so that's amazing. Like, well done. We should be more like that.
We all need to be more like Josh. So how do we in saying that, I think it's a really important point. My wife just deleted all of her social media this year, and like she's never on her phone. She's amazing. She's like the best. But I'm the same. Like even yesterday, I was a bit sad about it. I was on my phone and my daughter was right in front of me. And she's like, she's literally saying, "Dad, Dad," and I'm on my phone. And then my wife yelled at me and I got off my phone and I
She said
yelled
the
back
quiet
and I said,
part out
well,
loud.
I've got work to do. I've got things to do. Because the reality is our businesses that we work on and what we're preaching to churches and what we're putting out there it is online. If we took all of that away, we wouldn't have a business. So how do we navigate, you're right, our generation is like the first test dummies of this entire new world. How do we navigate without taking away, do you think? Because I don't think the answer is taking away devices or taking away online platforms. So how do we navigate this of like this in-person, touch, feel like we're together versus always sitting on our phones? How do we navigate it, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's as simple as like having boundaries for yourself and understanding like what is healthy for you and what's not healthy for you. My pastor, one of my very best friends, he went and put himself through like what he calls a dopamine detox this last year. It's become a little bit like of a trendy thing where he was like, I realized that like my brain had been like a little bit jacked up by just like these dopamine fixes from like a little swipe. And he's like, I shouldn't be getting dopamine from that. Dopamine being like the reward chemical in our bodies.
Sure.
He's like, what happened was I couldn't actually get dopamine from like a normal interaction because I was so used to like the counterfeit version. So he's like, I had to go through a detox myself. So he had to like remove himself entirely to like refresh that part of him. And that's the great thing about the human body is like it's very adaptable. So like if you like give yourself space, it can reset. And so if you look at, sometimes I would really like it if there were like cameras all over my house and I could just watch how I behave separate from like the experience of it.
Yeah.
Because as someone who has been on camera, you're like, what? That's what I need to change that. So I'd love to have that like full time.
Yeah,
so
that'd
maybe
be
that's
cool.
the solution. Like install some CCTV cameras in your house and just like record yourself full time.
Yeah.
Watch it back. It'll be a sobering experience, I'm sure.
We're breaking you down, Brady. That's what's really happening.
Bro, I'm banking on tears. I'm waiting, but I don't know. Is it hard to get tears?
I am afraid that it will be difficult to get out of me.
Okay. Well,
I think I was most emotional when you were talking about your story though earlier. That like I don't really cry, but I felt like if I had the capacity to cry,
you don't cry?
You got that senior pastor energy. You never see them crying down the front.
rarely.
Oh yeah, is that like just by design or like
I don't know.
you just never have been a crier? Really?
No, not really ever been a crier.
Tristan, are you a crier?
Right.
Yeah, okay.
Cry. Balance each other out.
Look, when I cry, it's special. Like
yeah,
that was earned.
That's like actually
Yeah, okay, I like that.
pastor at our church. He's the most like grew up a jock and everything. Never seen him emotional once. And then he was with this one sermon. He was talking, and then he literally got like choked up. Everyone was like,
Who's that?
I'm not going to mention names. You might not want it mentioned. I don't know, but you can find it. Although it's probably online.
Taken.
yeah.
That was potent.
Yeah.
So then it's like, was that strategic? Was he like, I need a couple of extra salvation? No, sorry.
Well, we don't have that much more time, so I want to ask you kind of like a final question, or if you have anything else.
Yeah.
But AI, the future of the church. AI is very slowly taking our job, actually faster than I thought. I was just playing with a music generator yesterday called Suno. Have you heard of this? Do you keep up with AI much?
In ways that are helpful to me.
Yeah, sure. And I was playing with this thing, and I literally generated a song about my daughter, and I got emotional. It was like amazing. It's a beautiful song. But anyway, AI is getting to a point where, it's taking over a lot of, I guess, what we would do with our hands and do with our creativity. But how do you see the emergence of AI, the online presence, all that kind of thing, shaping the future of the church?
Also like the positive and negative aspects
Yeah, both
that you can
sides.
see happen. Yeah.
Yeah, there's some things that I love to use AI for. We were out recording earlier, and I was just recording on like a DJI mic, the ones we've got on us right now. And like we were recording, there was some like drilling in the background. There was plenty of wind noise. And as I'm recording, I'm just like, oh man, it's so good to record these days because like I know.
Yeah.
And then I was showing you the audio after. Like you can polish it up to sound like pristine perfection.
Bro, it sounded freaking unbelievable.
It's miraculous what can be done, and that's all done automatically.
Yeah.
If I have noise in an image, I can use algorithm AI noise removal that is so much more precise than like just a rough scale of like 0 to 100 on noise removal. There are so many things that AI does amazing. A church will send us a logo for their website design. This is part of what Tristan does. And they're like, this is our logo. And we're like, my goodness, it's a PDF. We run it through our AI program and it'll just be like, now it's a vector. And it's like, perfect. Like we did, like,
That's awesome.
AI does amazing things. And I love using AI for that. I also think that listening to people that are smarter than me, after AI had like an incredible like ramp up, like over the past 6 months, like it's kind of like stagnated a little bit. And I think a lot of that comes down to computing power. A lot of that comes down to like we taught AI on our world's like history on the internet, and for AI to like reach the next level, I've heard some speculations that like you would need like 25 worlds worth of internet history to teach it, because like it can only learn from us.
That's right.
And right now it
Yeah,
hasn't.
true.
And so like if we haven't like solved something in X amount of ways, and it can't like come up with new ways, it can only regurgitate. Like so I think it's been interesting kind of to see that plateau a bit. Not to say like that's permanent, but we saw it like all of our jobs are gone, and then like plateaued a little bit. So I would say I'm not as bullish on AI as some other folks, and I also think like. What we know about this time in human history is that we are more connected than ever, and we are more lonely than ever.
Yeah, so true.
And what's amazing about the church is that it's like virtually alone as an industry that's like want to connect with people, want to have like real community. That's what, going back to the beginning of this conversation, that's what got me connected to church in the first place. It's probably more needed now than ever. And I think if churches can step into that, I mean, people are just yearning for it.
Yeah, it's true. It's that I think as we push further toward online tech, AI, digital world, it's going to, I think inevitably, and we talk about this all the time, it's going to push us back to human touch, feel, being in the room. Like us chatting on FaceTime before was nothing on us having a conversation right here, right now. And so, I tend to agree, but I do worry about, my daughter's generation in some ways, it's tough. Like we don't let her watch TV, right? Like she watches TV rarely, but I don't know if that's the answer. Like I don't know if it's the answer to just take everything away completely. So like I guess I ask because I'm like, what does this look like in 10 years? What does this look like in 15 years? And I think you're right in the sense that the church is always that central place of meeting, and we may use technology, we may use social media to reach, but it's not the core of what we do as the church. And I love that thought. It's really good.
So even how you were telling us before going down to Melbourne to use like old disposable cameras, because that's like so back now. And you even see Gen Z and like the Alpha, like they kind of reject some of the things more like, these kids graduating are trying to get their hands on, they told me like old school vintage, but like DV cameras, you know what I mean? To film their like prom and stuff, because they're all like relating back to that more than like technology. It's actually interesting. It's like we're almost like the suckers, our generation, for technology and all this AI stuff. But it's like, I wonder if the younger generations, bar they can cheat on an assignment, bar that, do they have as much interest in it as we do almost, because they just had it there since they were born.
Yeah, there is speculation like, there's going to be a generation that just rejects this. And I'm not convinced by that thesis whatsoever. I don't think that'll happen. What I do think is every generation wants authenticity, and how that authenticity is expressed differs by generation. So like, we all wear jeans, but you can tell by the silhouette and the wash, like usually what generation is wearing which type of jean.
Skinny jeans still.
Surely not.
I saw this with a stock photo site that was popularized this summer. It was this, Gen Z person who was like, hey, are you tired of Unsplash, which is a creative, stock photo site? They're like, isn't that just so inauthentic? And I was like, what? Unsplash? Hey, that's my stock photo site. We made that as the authentic one because iStock was too plastic. And they're like, we're a real stock photo site for authenticity. We only take stuff on our phones. And all these marketing, all these Gen Z was like, finally, real stock photo. I was like, what is happening right now?
That's insane.
And I realized I was like, this generation's expression of authenticity and genuine is this creative expression. And my generation's expression of authenticity looks like this. We both have the same goal, and they just look different. And what one generation perceives as authentic is what another one will perceive as like contrived. And I was like, oh, wow, well, we're screwed. But like, that's, they both want the same thing. And so understanding that we all want the same thing means that, okay, you're like expressing it in a disposable camera. Like that's a fun way of expressing it, but like what's actually genuine is just real human touch. That's what's tactile, not
fully
film grain.
100%. Look, man, it's 4:50. I'm very aware that you guys have a dinner reservation tonight. So, we could talk forever. Maybe we do this. Maybe we come over to Canada or something, come and hang out. But
yeah, absolutely.
Man, I really appreciate your time.
Yeah.
And again, like we just hit you up on DMs and you're like, yeah, let's do it. So I just appreciate that about you. Like,
thank you.
You talk about, all of these things about, we're talking about authenticity and using your platform and you do. And I think that translates through again, like I haven't seen too much about what you do, but every time I see you pop up, I'm like, there's a spirit that this guy carries. And I really believe that the spirit we carry and the things that we do translate through digital. And I just want to encourage you and say, I think you're doing an amazing job.
Oh, thank you.
And the same spirit that we had here having a conversation is the exact same I see online. So I love what you're doing, and I just really appreciate you giving us the time, man.
Thanks, guys. This was a lot of
And thank you for all you do for all the church creatives that are struggling and you're just helping them out.
Happy to.
Cool.
Kingdom creatives, our show.